So next we're going to look into how to use Validata. And essentially what Validata is a automatic sample recognition system. Okay, so in order for us to do this, we need a folder where we've got our samples supporting documentations, and then we need a table with our samples in it. Now, the most important thing in this table is having a invoice number, a reference number, a source document reference number, so that Validata can identify the correct document. Essentially, what Validata does is it will go and access each and every single one of those PDFs and pictures that you've got in the folder, and then search for this invoice number or reference number that you have. Once it matches that reference number, it will then match the rest of the items to that document. So that is how Validata works. Now let's use this. Okay, so to start off, I'll head into the Audit Toolbar in my sampling section, and I'll click on Validata. Once I've clicked on Validata, what you'll see is it will tell me about my range at the top here. Again, I can change the range selection. I can tell it if we have headers in the first row or not. Then I need to tell it what is the heading that contains my document / reference number. Now you can see it has tried to identify this as the invoice date, and the correct one is our invoice number. So we'll just change it to that. Then it's asking us select the headings containing the info to be validated. Now this is the case when maybe your samples come from the GL and you don't want it to try and look for your GL account name in the source document, those kinds of things. Then you can simply select headers and then select the headers that you actually want to use. But in my case, right, I want to actually use all of them, so I'm just going to keep it as select all. Okay, then we need to select the folder that contains our source documentation. Now you can see I've got mine already linked to this folder, but just to show you, we can simply click on select folder, and this will then allow us to make a selection of a folder on our document, okay, on our computer. All right, so just to show you very simply, I can do that, head over to my desktop over here, and inside of my desktop I've got my testing folder. All right, then we get into the presentation preferences. Now the presentation preferences are showing us asking us how we're going to show this this information once it's come out. Okay, so we wanted to report it either in the current sheet like this or in a new sheet. Okay, for now I'm going to go with a new sheet just to show you how it works. Then we've got the option over here to link the source document. Now you can untick this if you'd like to, but I'm going to keep it ticked and I'll show you exactly how this works. But essentially it adds a link to that document into your document. So into your sheet, it will add a link to the original source document next to each item. Okay. Then we've got the option on whether we want to highlight our results highlight the items based on the results that we get, or if we want to add a tick mark based on the results. So I'm going to go with highlighting them just for this instance. Either or, it's really up to your preference. And then we get our search preferences. Now, the first search preference is for one-to-many matching. And what this is telling us is saying, hey, do you have the actual line items of the, like does one line item of your sample relate to one source document, or might it find more than one item in one source document? So essentially, if we think about invoices, if an invoice has individual lines for each product, right? Does your sample show you the total value of the invoice, or does it show you the broken up individual lines of the invoice? If it shows you the broken up lines, then you want to use one-to-many matching. If it doesn't, then you do not want to use one-to-many matching. But either way, it should still work correctly without an issue. Then the next item is strict document / reference number search. And this is an important one, because it will then tell the tool whether these invoice numbers will be found exactly like that on the documents. Okay, and so if these invoice numbers look exactly the same as they would on the document, you would use this. If not, then it applies a fuzzy matching. But in this case, you're more than like, if it's still the same, you can still run it without the strict documents. It will still get to the same answers, or you can run it with it. I'll run it without it for now. Okay, so that's everything we need to fill out in order to run the function. And once we're ready, we can then go ahead and click on continue. And what happens now is that the audit toolbar then starts to look into these invoice numbers. First, it will read every single one of the PDFs and images, so turn it into a version that it actually can read. And once it's read that, then it will start to do a comparison between each item. Now, we'll just give it a second here for it to run this function, and then we'll catch up after that. And there we go. Now we're starting to see our results that are about to come back. And once it's done, this is what it will give us as a result. It will tell us that our data has been validated. And so this is the result we'll see. It's going to tell us what the methodology is, what the configuration was that we used, the amount of documents that we've scanned, right? The amount of items that we've tested, matches that were found, and then if there were any documents that were either encrypted or not found. Now, we'll see here in our results and source documents tab that firstly, these are the source documents to these invoices. So if I double click on one of these items, it will then open up that document on my computer. And this is linked inside the document. So if I share this with someone, then they will still be able to open up these documents that are here. So you don't need to worry about the fact that it might be stuck on your computer or anything like that. Then when we look at the results, we see that we've got these tick marks in this tick mark legend over here that are telling us that the items that are ticked in green have been fully validated, so we're completely happy with it. And the items that are in red are partially validated. Now, if something could not be found, you'd find another item over here, another tick mark over here that looks as follows. There we go, like this. And it would generally say not found, right? So you'd see that, and then you'd see that question mark here on the side next to whichever item hasn't been found. Now, in our case, not necessary, so we don't need to worry about it. Now, let's look at the actual results that we received here. So we can see that some of these items have been partially validated, right? And this might be just because the system could not read that particular line or could not find that specific item. And so what having the source document here does for you is it allows you to open this up and confirm this manually quickly to make sure that it is correct. Or if it is not correct, you can then make sure that you get the correct value in there. But this has made it significantly easier to use to perform your samples. Okay, one thing to note is that if an item is just 0, it will always come back as a partially validated item. Okay, perfect. And that is as simple as it is to use Validata.